I found out my parents had taken $120,000 from my savings account on a rainy Thursday morning, before I'd even had coffee. I was in my office, answering emails, when I logged into my bank app to check on a transfer for a contractor I was planning to hire for my parents' house repairs. The number staring back at me was not just lower, it was gutted. A single transaction. 5 days ago. $120,000. Gone. My name is Rachel, and I'm the responsible daughter. The one who plans. The one who saves. The one who never needed to be reminded to pay bills or send birthday cards. For the last 15 years, I've worked in supply chain management at a logistics firm, waking up before dawn to catch early calls with overseas vendors, spending nights combing through spreadsheets. I never made millions, but I earned steadily, reliably, and every month, without fail, I deposited a large part of my salary into a joint savings account I had opened with my parents, the house fund. The plan was simple. That money would go toward getting my parents out of the crumbling, drafty 2-story house they've lived in since the 80s. My mom has rheumatoid arthritis that makes the stairs nearly impossible now, and my dad, proud and stubborn as ever, won't stop working despite his back issues and early signs of hypertension. Their house floods when it rains. Black mold creeps up the corners of the bathroom. Last winter, they had to sleep downstairs on the couch for 3 weeks because the upstairs heating gave out. I couldn't bear the thought of them aging in that place. So I saved. Quietly. Steadily. I didn't tell many people. Not even my boyfriend, Liam, knew the full amount. He'd often nudge me when he saw me wiring money to my parents' account. "You know it's not your job to keep them afloat, right?" he'd say. I'd shrug. I know, but they're not getting any younger, and I can't sit by and watch them live like that. The worst part about seeing that money disappear wasn't the loss itself. It was the fact that I had no idea it was gone. No warning, no phone call, just taken. I drove to my parents' house in a blur, barely remembering to grab my keys. My thoughts swirled into a storm of denial, disbelief, and that horrible gnawing sense that something inside me had shifted forever. When I pulled into their cracked driveway, both of their cars were parked. The front window glowed with soft light, and for a moment, everything looked normal. But I wasn't normal. I was unraveling. I didn't knock. I used the key they'd never asked me to return. They were in the kitchen, sipping coffee. Mom looked up and smiled automatically before her face fell. "Rachel, is everything okay?" I held up my phone. "Where is it?" They looked confused, or pretended to. I hated that I couldn't tell which. The savings, the joint account. $120,000 was withdrawn 5 days ago. Dad cleared his throat. "Now, Rachel?" "No," I cut him off. "Don't soften this. Don't say, 'Let's talk about it calmly.' I want a direct answer. Where did it go?" There was a long, suffocating pause. Then my mother looked down at her mug. We used it." I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. "Used it for what?" Her eyes flicked up, guilty, almost tearful. "Brooke's wedding." The kitchen spun. My knees nearly gave out. I grabbed the edge of the counter, cold fury surging up my spine. "You gave Brooke my house fund? The one we agreed was for your retirement home? For repairs? That house is falling apart, and you spent it on Brooke's wedding?" Dad stood up, defensive. "It's not like that. We didn't just hand it over. We're contributing. She said she'd pay it back. Brandon's family is well off." "Are you insane?" My voice cracked. "This isn't a loan. You never asked me. You never even told me." "You just took it. And for what? A cake that costs more than your plumbing? Fireworks and floral arches while your foundation is literally sinking?" Mom reached out. "Sweetheart." "Don't," I said, stepping back. "Don't you dare. Call me that right now." Then, like a viper in velvet, Brooke entered from the living room. She was wearing one of those silk robes that rich brides wear in bachelorette photos, hair done like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. "Oh my God," she said flatly. "Is this really about the money?" I stared at her. You knew, and you let them take it." Brooke rolled her eyes. "They offered. I didn't steal it. You didn't stop them either." She crossed her arms. "You're acting like some martyr. You don't have kids. You live in an apartment. You can't stand. What else were you going to do with that money? Sit on it while Mom and Dad rot in that house?" I was shaking. "That money was going to save them, not impress your fiancé's rich family." Brooke smirked. "They need to see I'm not trash, that I belong. Sorry you don't get that. There are moments in your life when something snaps, not with a bang, but a quiet, soul-deep break that no one else hears but you." I heard mine then. "You know what?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're done. You, me, them. I'm out," Mom gasped. "Rachel, no!" "I'm changing the account. I'm cutting you off. And I never want to hear the words, 'You can always make more' again. Because what I lost wasn't just money. It was respect. And you'll never get that back." As I turned and walked out into the drizzle, Liam's text popped up on my phone. "You okay?" I stared at the screen, then at the house, my childhood home that no longer felt like mine. I texted, "Back no, but I will be," and I meant it. I had just lost $120,000. But I had finally found clarity. And the truth was worth every cent. 3 weeks before I found out about the missing money, there was a dinner, a celebration. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. Liam and I had brought over wine, and I even baked Mom's favorite lemon tart, something I hadn't done in years. I remember standing in their cramped kitchen, watching steam curl up from the mashed potatoes while Brooke sat cross-legged on the living room rug, twirling a gold bangle around her wrist like she owned the air we all breathed. She looked different, glowier, like someone who knew she had the world in her pocket. I should have known then. I should have felt the shift. We were halfway through dinner, the kind where everyone talks over each other and you can't tell who's listening to who, when Brooke clinked her glass with a spoon. She stood, like she was accepting an award. "I have an announcement," she said, with a spark in her eyes that always used to mean trouble. "Brandon proposed last weekend." Mom dropped her fork and squealed. Dad beamed. Liam gave me a sideways glance and I nodded slowly, forcing a smile. I was genuinely happy for her. For a minute. But then came the second shoe, the one I hadn't braced for. "I'm planning the wedding of my dreams," she continued, pulling out her phone and flipping through Pinterest boards, vendor quotes, floral arrangements. "The venue's in Napa. A private vineyard estate. We're flying in a string quartet, and I found a dress designer who'll custom make the gown. $18,000, but it's worth it." I blinked, stunned. "That sounds extravagant." Brooke didn't even look at me. "It's going to be perfect. Brandon's family is very old money. This isn't just a wedding, it's a statement." Mom was nodding, already carried away by visions of white roses and champagne fountains. "You deserve this, sweetheart," she said, eyes shining. "After everything, you deserve your dream." I couldn't speak. I looked at Dad, hoping for some anchor to reality, but he just sipped his wine and smiled vaguely at his plate. Liam, sensing my discomfort, rested a hand on my knee under the table. "Do you have a budget?" I asked carefully. Brooke laughed, tossing her hair. "About $200,000 to $50,000, give or take, but we'll make it work." I froze. "You and Brandon?" She finally turned toward me, that familiar tilt of her head, half innocence, half manipulation. "Well, not just us." My stomach dropped. "Brooke, please tell me you're not expecting Mom and Dad to fund this." There was a silence. Then Mom cleared her throat. "We've already told her we'd help. We want her to feel supported." "But how?" I asked. You're on a fixed income. The house needs major repairs. We've been saving for a new place. Brooke waved a manicured hand. I mean, Rachel, you've been putting away money for years. You've always said it was for the family. I stared at her. It is for the family. For when the pipes burst. For when the roof caves in. For when you two can't climb the stairs anymore. Brooke scoffed. That's so depressing. You live like a survivalist. You and Liam haven't even taken a vacation in 2 years. Don't you want to enjoy life for once? Liam leaned forward. Enjoying life doesn't mean burning through someone else's savings. Brooke rolled her eyes. No one's burning anything. It's called helping. This is what families do. That's when I realized something vital. Brooke didn't just believe she deserved the money. She thought I owed it to her. And worse, our parents agreed. After dinner, I found Mom alone in the kitchen, stacking plates. She's your sister, she said quietly, as if reading my mind. She's getting one shot at this. We didn't have much to give her growing up. Let her have this. What? About your one shot, I whispered. Your chance to live in a house that won't kill you slowly? She paused. She promised she'd help us once she's married. Brandon's family has resources. She said she'll pay it back. I shook my head. You really believe that? Mom didn't answer. Later, in the car, Liam drove in silence. I was gripping the door handle like the whole night had cracked my skeleton. I hate how quiet you get when you're angry, he said finally. I turned to him. I'm trying not to scream. You don't have to do this anymore, you know, he said gently. It doesn't make you a bad person to stop pouring yourself out for people who never fill you back up. I looked out the window, watching houses blur by, wondering how many of them had daughters like me, forgotten in the wake of someone else's glitter. The next morning, I sat at my desk and stared at the numbers in the account. I should have transferred it all into my name. I should have trusted less. I should have known that in my family, love wasn't just conditional, it came with terms and withdrawal slips. I didn't know it yet, but in 5 days that money would be gone. And with it, the last illusion I had about what family means. I didn't plan to check the account that day. I was at work, in the middle of reviewing inventory discrepancies from our Minneapolis warehouse, when a passing thought whispered, "Double-check the house fund." Not because I suspected anything, because I didn't. Because I trusted my parents. Because I believed, even after that awkward dinner with Brooke, that they wouldn't go that far. I clicked into the banking app between emails, more out of habit than concern. My stomach was still churning from the way Brooke had practically declared my savings open season, but I kept telling myself, Mom and Dad wouldn't do it without asking. They know what that money is for. I logged in, waded through the usual 2-factor prompts, and then I saw it. Current balance, $2,174.86. I blinked, refreshed the screen, checked the date. Then, like peeling a scab, I opened the transaction history. One transfer, 5 days ago, $120,000. Gone. Transferred directly to a checking account under my parents' names. I stared at the screen so long my vision blurred. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat, shallow and fast, like I'd run up a hill. A cold sweat broke across my back. I tried to think, tried to reason, tried to rationalize, but it hit me like a truck. They did it. They really did it. Liam noticed something was off the moment I walked through the door that evening. I dropped my bag harder than I meant to and sat on the couch without even taking off my shoes. He came over slowly, crouched in front of me. What happened? I handed him my phone. Check the balance. He looked, scanned, stared. Rachel, he whispered. I felt numb, hollowed out. I need to hear it from them, I said, standing suddenly. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe, God, I don't even know. Maybe a mistake? But I didn't believe that. Not really. I just needed to see their faces when I asked. I needed the lie confirmed with silence. I drove faster than I should have. The familiar route to my parents' house suddenly felt alien, like I was heading into enemy territory. The sun had dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across the road. I didn't knock when I arrived. I used the key they'd forgotten to ask back. They were in the living room, watching one of those antique renovation shows. My mom looked up and smiled. "Rachel, what a surprise! Where's the money?" I said. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Dad muted the TV. Mom set her tea down. "What money?" she asked, her voice already trembling. "Don't do that," I snapped. "Don't pretend. The house fund. You emptied it 5 days ago." Dad stood slowly, clearing his throat. "We were going to tell you." "When? After the vows? After the cake cutting?" My voice was rising, but I didn't care. Mom reached for me. "Rachel, we didn't mean..." "Mean what?" I yanked away. "You didn't mean to steal from me?" "Because that's what this is. You didn't just take money. You took years. Years of planning. Years of self-denial. I could have bought a house of my own, taken a real vacation, lived without this constant weight. But no. I put you first. I thought I was investing in something solid, something good." "She's your sister," Dad said, his voice firmer now. "She needed help." I turned to him, stunned. "No. She wanted a wedding. You needed a safe home. You chose her dream over your safety." Mom was crying now, hands shaking. "She promised she'd help us once she's married. Brandon's family is..." "Brandon doesn't even know," I hissed. "You think he'll just magically accept that his in-laws bankrupted their daughter for his wife's fireworks show?" At that moment, the front door opened. Brooke. She stepped in, flipping her hair, keys dangling from her fingers. "Oh, is this the part where Rachel pretends she's a victim again?" I turned. "You knew." She shrugged, unapologetic. "Of course I knew. They told me they'd talk to you. But I figured it was only a matter of time before you started making this dramatic." "You told them to take it?" I asked, she said, emphasizing the word like it mattered. "They said yes. It's their money too." "You're unbelievable." She laughed coldly. "It's a wedding, Rachel, not a crime. You still have your job. You'll make it back." Something inside me broke then. Not like a scream or a tear, more like a door closing, slow and permanent. "No," I said. "Not this time." I pulled my phone from my coat and, right in front of them, removed their names from the bank account. Closed the joint access, changed the auto deposit. Done. "I'm out," I said, turning to the door. "Don't do this," Mom whispered. "We're still your parents." "Then you should have acted like it." I left, slamming the door behind me. Outside, the night was colder than I expected. I took a shaky breath and realized I hadn't just lost money. I'd lost the foundation I thought my life was built on. Trust, loyalty, family. I got in the car, hands trembling, and drove. No destination, just movement, the kind you need when you're running from something you can't fix. And the worst part? I didn't cry. Not that night. Not yet. Because when betrayal runs that deep, tears don't come. First, the numbness does. And it lingers, heavy and quiet, like the silence after a door you never thought would close finally slams shut. I didn't sleep the night after I confronted them. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the shadows of tree branches dancing across, it like crooked fingers. Liam had fallen asleep hours earlier, his breathing steady beside me, but my mind was a cyclone. I kept replaying it. The blank looks on my parents' faces, Brooke's smug smile, the bitter taste of betrayal lingering in my throat. I kept waiting for a wave of grief, for tears, for some kind of collapse. But it never came. Instead, there was just a cold, biting clarity. They had chosen, and I had finally seen them for who they were. The next morning, I got up before sunrise. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table in silence, staring at my laptop screen. The first thing I did was call the bank to verify the closure of the joint account and move every remaining cent into an account under my name only. Then I drafted a simple legal note revoking any financial authorization my parents had over my assets. It felt clinical, like cutting off a gangrenous limb. I called in sick to work. I didn't have it in me to pretend everything was fine. Liam came out mid-morning, hair a mess, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He sat down across from me, took my hand without a word. After a long pause, he asked, "What now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I can't go back. Not after this." "You don't have to," he said. "You already did everything you could, for years." "I know," I whispered. "But why does it feel like I'm the one who's abandoning them?" He gave me a long look, the kind that slices through your self-deception. "Because they've made you believe that love is sacrifice, that being a good daughter means self-erasure." I nodded slowly, blinking hard. I believed them. That afternoon, I started cleaning out old documents from my closet, bank statements, repair estimates for my parents' house, contractor quotes. Each one felt like a relic from a past life. In one of the folders, I found a printed floor plan I had drawn myself 2 years ago. A modest one-story home, accessible rooms, wide doorways, no stairs. I had even written notes in the margins: easy-to-reach cabinets for Mom, covered porch with ramp, Dad's music room. I sat on the floor, holding that sheet of paper, and finally cried. The dreams I had weren't extravagant. I didn't want a luxury penthouse or a grand gesture. I wanted safety, dignity, a future for my parents that didn't involve shivering through winter nights or navigating a collapsing staircase. I wanted to give them comfort, not because I owed them, but because I loved them. And they sold that for a flower wall and a designer dress. 2 days later, I got a text from Brooke. No apology, just a snide, one-line message. "Still sulking?" I stared at it, stunned at the gall, the sheer cruelty. Then another text, this time from Mom. "Let's not let money come between us. Family is more important." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because to them, money wasn't just money. It was a weapon. And I'd spent too long pretending it wasn't being used against me. Liam encouraged me to get out of the city that weekend. "Let's go somewhere quiet," he said. "Disconnect, just for a couple of days." I agreed. We drove upstate to a small cabin we'd stayed at once before, nestled in the woods near a lake. The air was crisp, the silence deep. We hiked during the day and sat by a fire at night. No phones, no emails, no Brooke. On the second night, while staring into the fire, I turned to Liam and asked, "Do you think they ever really saw me? I mean, saw what I was trying to do for them?" He took a long time to answer. "I think they saw it. They just didn't value it. Not in the way you needed them to." It was a painful truth. But it also gave me something I hadn't had before. Permission. Permission to stop. To let go of the belief that if I just gave a little more, loved a little harder, sacrificed a little longer, they'd finally see me. They wouldn't. Not because I wasn't enough, but because Brooke was louder, more glittering, easier to cheer. For when we came back to the city, I blocked Brooke's number. I muted my parents' group chat. I didn't announce it. I just stepped away. A silent, clean break. Work became a refuge. For the first time in months, I threw myself into a project that had nothing to do with damage control. I started jogging in the mornings, something I hadn't done since my 20s. Liam and I made dinner together every night, and we started talking, really talking, about what our future might look like, just the two of us. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. It was from my dad. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a justification, carefully cloaked in nostalgia. "You've always been the steady one," he wrote. "Your mother and I thought, well, we thought you'd understand. Brooke needed this chance. We didn't want her to feel small next. To Brandon's family. You've always had your life together. We hoped you'd forgive us." I folded the letter and set it in the drawer with the house plans. I didn't need to read it again. They didn't regret the decision. Only the fallout. And I wasn't about to pay for their remorse with another decade of my peace. What they didn't understand, what they still didn't understand, was that I hadn't gone silent out of anger. I'd gone silent because I'd finally found the courage to stop screaming into a void. Because when someone shows you, again and again, that their love comes with conditions, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, is walk away. And I was finally learning how to walk. I thought I had felt the worst of it the day I saw the empty account. I thought the betrayal had already reached its peak when my parents stood in front of me, unable to look me in the eye, and told me they'd given away my savings like it was a favor I owed Brooke. But I was wrong. The worst part was yet to come. The moment I realized they didn't just take the money, they believed they were right to do it. It happened 3 days after I cut them off. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my family since that night. I hadn't responded to Brooke's text or Mom's guilt-laced voicemail. Liam suggested we get out of town for a few days, take a break, clear my head. And I agreed. But first I needed to confront something. Not them, but her. I called Brooke. I needed to hear her say it. I needed the confirmation, the final break. She answered on the 5th ring, chipper as always. "Oh, hey, I'm at the cake tasting. Can we make this quick?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Brooke, I know about the money. I know exactly. How much was taken? I know it's gone." There was a pause. Then light and breezy. "If Mom and Dad gave it to me, that's between them and me. You're not the boss of anyone." "It wasn't theirs to give," I said through clenched teeth. "It was our joint savings. I set it up so we could build them a safe home. After all these years of leaking ceilings and moldy bathrooms, you took that and turned it into a fireworks. Budget?" "You're being dramatic, Rachel." My hands were trembling. "Give it back," she laughed. "With what? The deposits are already made. The venue, the flowers, the videographer, the horse carriage, Rachel. It's done. You think you can just cancel a wedding because your ego is bruised? I think I can ask for what's mine." "Please," she snapped. "You always think you're better than everyone. Just because you save receipts and wear sensible shoes and talk about Roth IRAs at brunch, you're jealous." There it was. That word again. I felt something break inside me. Not like a sharp snap, more like a slow, final rip, like fabric being torn seam by seam. "Jealous?" I said quietly. "Jealous of what? That you're about to marry into a family who has no idea you're paying for your dream wedding with stolen money? Don't. Be disgusting. Does Brandon even know? Or did you lie to him too?" Another pause. "It's none of your business. You know what, Rachel? Don't come to the wedding. Honestly, you'd just ruin it with your judgmental stares and martyr attitude." "Good," I said, voice steady, because I wasn't planning to. Then I hung up. Liam found me 20 minutes later sitting in the hallway, phone beside me on the floor, my head resting against the wall. He didn't ask what she said. He just sat beside me and waited. Eventually, I whispered, "She doesn't think she did anything wrong. None of them do." He nodded. "Then stop trying to make them see. Let them learn." That night, I removed myself from every group chat, every shared family calendar, every digital string tying me back to them. It felt terrifying and liberating. The following week was strange, quiet, unsettling, like stepping into a world where I no longer had a role to play. I didn't have a family to worry about, didn't have aging parents to budget for, or a crumbling house to fix. And for the first time in years, I realized I had no idea what I wanted for me. Liam suggested we spend a weekend away in a small town we'd always talked about visiting. It was a sleepy, lakeside place with antique shops and homemade pies, the kind of place where time moves slower and everyone waves at each other. We rented a cabin, turned off our phones, and spent 3 days walking trails, drinking wine, and lying under trees. On the second night, we sat on a bench overlooking the water. Liam reached into his backpack and pulled out a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked, taking it. "Open it." Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printed photo of a small cottage with white shutters and a red door. "I found it last week," he said. 2 bedrooms, fireplace, no stairs, in our price range. I looked at him, blinking back tears. "We could put the money toward our home now," he said. "If you're ready." And just like that, the world tilted. The weight I'd been carrying for 15 years, the house fund, the worry, the obligation, was gone. Not stolen, released. I kissed him and whispered, "Let's do it." On the way home, I got one last message from Dad. It was short. "Call me. It's important." I deleted it without reading further, because whatever was left to say I had already heard in their silence. They chose the daughter with the louder dreams, the one who wanted chandeliers and drone footage and gold-rimmed dinner plates. They spent everything I gave them chasing an illusion. But I wasn't chasing anymore. Was building. Brick by brick. Truth by truth. And I wasn't looking back. The silence that followed my departure from the family was more deafening than any argument could have been. I thought there would be rage, threats, begging, maybe even some half-hearted attempt at reconciliation. But what came instead was nothing. And that hurt more than I was ready to admit. I didn't hear from them for weeks. Not a word from Mom. No awkward apology texts from Dad. Brooke went radio silent, her Instagram posts still public but muted on my phone, her world looking like a luxury fairy tale powered by the bones of my sacrifice. I didn't engage. I couldn't. Watching her smile in bridal boutiques and pose in candlelit engagement dinners was like pressing on a bruise I couldn't afford to feel anymore. I kept busy. Work became my sanctuary. Organized, predictable, a space where effort was rewarded, not exploited. I started showing up early again, diving into projects with mechanical focus. My coworkers noticed I was quieter, more distant. One of them, Jenna, who used to chat my ear off about her toddlers, left a coffee and a sticky note on my desk one morning. "Whatever it is, I hope you're choosing yourself." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until I reread it 6 times in one afternoon. Liam, patient as ever, didn't press. He cooked for us more often, insisted I pick the music in the evenings, held me when I woke from those half-sleeping nightmares where the ceiling collapsed and I was back in my childhood home, water dripping, walls crumbling, dreams soaking wet, and rotting. One Friday night, about a month after I'd walked out of my parents' house, Liam and I sat on the floor of our apartment with a bottle of red wine and a printed checklist titled, "What We Want in a Home." I had written the list years ago for my parents. I crossed out every line that didn't belong to me anymore. Instead, I added, quiet mornings, a fireplace, a place where no one takes without asking. Liam noticed my edits and looked at me for a long time before he said, "You know, you haven't cried." I set the pen down. If I start, I might not stop. He didn't push. He just reached out and took my hand. That weekend, we went camping. It wasn't extravagant, just a small clearing near a lake upstate, somewhere we could build a fire, look up at stars without the noise of the city pressing in. I brought the book I'd been pretending to read for weeks and left my phone in the glove box. No emails, no notifications, no Brooke. The first night, we sat in silence, listening to the trees groan under the wind. I stared into the fire and finally whispered, "Do you think she'll ever realize what she took from me?" Liam poked at the embers. "Maybe. But by the time she does, it won't matter." "Why?" "Because by then you'll have already built something better." I didn't answer, but something in me exhaled. On our last morning there, I woke up early. The world was covered in dew, the kind of cold silence that wraps around your skin, like linen. I stepped out of the tent and stood by the water. No noise, no demands. Just the sound of a breeze skimming across the lake, and for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like I belonged to myself again. We returned home late Sunday night. I powered my phone back on and saw 3 missed calls from a blocked number. I listened to one voicemail, Mom's voice, soft and strained. "We're not angry, Rachel. We're just hurt. You walking away like this. It feels like we lost both daughters." I wanted to laugh. Lost both daughters? No, they hadn't lost Brooke. They chose her. They pinned every hope, every bit of financial desperation, every fragile piece of pride on her wedding, like it was some kind of redemption arc. And now they wanted me back, not because they saw me, but because their foundation was cracking and they needed the builder again. I deleted the message. Later that night, Liam found me on the couch, staring at nothing. "They called again," I said. He sat beside me, not saying anything. "I don't feel angry," I murmured. "Not anymore. I just feel done, like something's over that I didn't even know was dying." "Sometimes," he said gently, "things die quietly." I nodded. "And sometimes people keep feeding the corpse, hoping it'll stand up and hug them." He looked at me then, eyes searching. "What do you want to do, Rachel? Not what you should do. What you want." I paused. "I want to move forward. I want to buy a house. I want a wedding that doesn't involve maxed out credit cards and emotional blackmail. I want a life where my worth isn't determined by what I give up for other people." "Then that's what we'll build." And right then, I made a promise. Not to Liam, not to the version of me my parents wanted, not even to the heartbroken girl still trying to patch up memories that bled when touched. I made a promise to myself. I would never again invest in people who saw me as a backup plan. That promise became my compass, and I was finally ready to follow it. 3 months had passed since I walked out of my parents' house and didn't look back. 3 months of silence, of watching seasons change from behind my apartment window, of moving forward one painstaking, necessary step at a time. I had expected anger, guilt-tripping, maybe even more voicemail pleas. But instead, what came was something colder. Absence. It was like I had never existed in that family at all, until Aunt Claire called. It was a Sunday morning. Liam and I were at the farmer's market, carrying bags of peaches and homemade bread, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me to answer. I stepped away from the crowd, pressing the phone to my ear. "Rachel," came the voice I hadn't heard in years. Claire, my mother's younger sister, always the quiet observer in family gatherings, never one to intervene, until now. "Hi," I said cautiously. "I wasn't sure you'd pick up," she replied. "But I figured you deserve to know." "Know what?" Claire hesitated. "It's about the wedding. And Brooke." I closed my eyes. "What now?" "Let me start from the beginning," she said gently. "I went to the wedding. That surprised me." Claire had always kept her distance, especially from Brooke's drama. But apparently she'd been roped in by guilt or curiosity. "It was everything you'd expect," she continued. "Over the top. Silks, chandeliers, 300 guests, an orchestra, champagne towers. And none of it felt real. I said nothing. They looked happy for about a week, Claire said. But it didn't last. I turned away from Liam, who had returned with 2 iced coffees. I mouthed, "Give me a minute," and walked toward a shaded bench. Brandon found out, Claire continued, about the money, about the account. Brooke finally told him, well, half the truth. She said Mom and Dad had given her a family inheritance to help with the wedding. I laughed bitterly. An inheritance from someone still alive and broke. Classy. Brandon's family hired an accountant to review their joint finances. Before combining assets, she explained. He saw the $120K deposit and asked questions. Brooke cracked. I could imagine it. Her perfectly painted face falling under pressure, the truth slipping out in fragments, the drama that must have exploded like fine china hitting tile. Did she tell him the real source? I asked. Eventually. And it ruined everything. Brandon felt betrayed, said he would have paid for a small, meaningful wedding if she'd just been honest. But the lie, using stolen money to impress his family, it broke something. I leaned back on the bench. So he left her? They're still married, technically, but barely speaking. Separate bedrooms. She's already back living at your parents' place most nights. Of course she was. Brooke always knew how to fall up, how to collapse into someone else's arms, someone else's resources. Why are you telling me this? I asked, more weary than angry. Because I think you deserve to know you weren't crazy, Claire said. You were right, and I don't think anyone in that house will ever say it out loud. That landed hard, because she was right. And hearing it from someone in the family, someone who saw it, acknowledged it, was like oxygen after months of drowning. I'm not calling to pull you back in, Claire added. I just wanted you to hear the truth from someone who still remembers what you've done for that family. I haven't forgotten, and I don't think your parents ever will either. They're just too proud to say it. My throat tightened. I looked out at the people bustling through the market, wondering how many of them had once been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love them. Thanks for telling me, I said quietly. There's one more thing, she added. Your parents' house. It's worse than I thought. There's water damage upstairs, mold in the walls. I went by last week and your dad looked exhausted. Your mom won't say it, but she's scared. I shut my eyes. That house, that cursed, rotting house, the one I'd tried so hard to rescue them from. I know they'll never ask, Claire said, but if something happens, I just thought you'd want to be prepared. I'm not coming back, I said, a little too quickly. I didn't say you should, she replied. I said you deserve to know. After the call, I sat in silence until Liam came to find me. He didn't ask questions, just handed me the coffee and waited. Brooke's marriage is already falling apart, I said, staring at the ground. Brandon found out about the money. She's back at my parents' place. The house is falling apart. Aunt Claire thinks I should be prepared. He nodded slowly. And what do you think? I think I spent half my life trying to save people who never wanted saving, and the other half waiting for them to say thank you. Liam leaned forward. Do you want to go check on them? No, I said. Not because I don't care, but because it would cost me more than I'm willing to give. We went home in silence. That night, I pulled out the old folder with the house plans. I stared at the penciled-in dreams I once had. Mom's safe bathtub, Dad's quiet reading nook, the sunroom I imagined for them. I didn't cry. I didn't burn it either. I folded the plans back up and tucked them into a drawer. Not because I still hoped, but because they were mine once. And even when people took everything else, they didn't get to keep that. It was a gray Tuesday in late October when my phone rang again. My parents' number, flashing on the screen like a ghost I hadn't invited. For a moment, I just stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I hadn't heard from them in months, Not since Aunt Claire's warning call and the revelations that followed. A part of me thought they'd given up trying to reach me. Another part, the softer one that still remembered birthday cards and lullabies, wondered if I should answer. I did. Rachel? Mom's voice was smaller than I remembered, quieter, stripped of the usual insistence. I didn't think you'd pick up? I almost didn't, I said. My tone wasn't cruel. It was tired, weighed down. There was silence on the line, broken only by a faint clatter in the background. Dishes, maybe. Or something falling. Things aren't good here, she said finally. I didn't say anything. The house, she exhaled. It's worse than we thought. A pipe burst in the upstairs bathroom last week. We had to shut off the water to the whole second floor. Your father. He slipped on the wet floor trying to fix it. He's fine, but he needed stitches. The ceiling's starting to sag. We don't know how long it'll hold. A long pause. We tried calling Brooke, she added, as if that was news to me. She said they're having money issues. Something about Brandon's family's business struggling. And now she's not around much. She moved back in, I said coldly. Didn't she? Another pause. Yes, sort of. She's here when she needs to be. But she says she's trying to figure things out. I could picture it already. Brooke sleeping in her old room while Dad limped around patching holes with duct tape, and Mom paced the kitchen wondering how it had all unraveled. I wanted to feel something, sympathy, guilt, even anger. But what I felt instead was empty resolve. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. But not in the way they wanted. Mom's voice trembled now. Rachel, we made a mistake. We know that now. I stared out the window. The trees outside had started to lose their leaves, branches bare against the gray sky. It wasn't just a mistake, I said softly. It was a choice. You chose her dream over your reality. Over me. I know. Her voice cracked. I see it now. I didn't rush to fill the silence. She promised us, Mom added after a moment. She said once she married Brandon, they'd help us, buy us a new house, send us money. She was so confident. That's Brooke, I said. Confident even when she's lying. Mom let out a bitter laugh, more pain than humor. We wanted to believe her. We wanted to believe we hadn't failed. And that was the heart of it. Their desperation, their denial, their need to redeem. Themselves through their golden child. They didn't just give her the money, they gave her the last of their hope. Can you help? She asked. The question was gentle, not demanding. But it still hit like a punch. I closed my eyes. I'm not in a position to help anymore, Mom. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, the hesitation in every inhale. Not even with the plumbing? Your father can't go up and down the stairs all night just to use the downstairs bathroom. His back… I know, I said. I know everything about that house. I knew it years ago when I begged you to let me fix it. She didn't respond. I'm sorry, I continued. But I can't set myself on fire to keep you warm. Not again. After I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat with the stillness like it was an old friend. That conversation, gentle as it was, felt like the last ember of a bridge I used to walk every day, and it finally burned out. Later that evening, I called Aunt Claire. I needed someone who wouldn't guilt me, someone who wouldn't spin my boundaries into cruelty. She called you? Claire asked after I explained. Yes. She's been trying to reach you for weeks, but I told her she had to own it. No. Games. No guilt. Just the truth. Well, she tried, I said. She did more than your father. He still thinks this will all blow over. I snorted. It won't. No, she agreed. It shouldn't. Then she hesitated. You should know. Brooke is drowning. Brandon finally cut her off completely. Turns out she took out loans behind his back to pay for extras on the wedding. Extra staff, live musicians, even drone footage. Thousands more. Of course she did. She's living in your parents' basement now. The luxury apartment is gone. The car? Repossessed. The only thing she kept was the dress. I imagined Brooke in a $40,000 gown, standing in a flooded basement, surrounded by ruined dreams and unpaid debts. Do they blame me? I asked. Claire paused. They don't have the courage to, not out loud, but deep down? No. I think they finally see it. What does that change? Nothing, she said honestly, but it might mean they'll stop asking. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. That night, I opened the folder again, the one with the house plans. I looked at my scribbled notes. Low maintenance flooring, easy access to laundry, front porch with railing. I'd spent years imagining my parents aging in safety, wrapped in the comfort of something I helped build. But they didn't want that. Not when it was real. They wanted the illusion, the spotlight, the golden child. I folded the plans one last time and placed them in the back of my closet. Then I turned to Liam and said, "Let's go house hunting, for us." And this time, it would be for a future built on something stronger than obligation. It would be built on truth. On trust, and it would be ours. 6 months after the phone call from my mother, I married Liam in a courthouse across the river from where we had our first date. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. The sky was clear, the air unseasonably warm for early spring, and there were exactly 7 people in the room. 2 clerks, our witness, Aunt Claire, and Liam's parents. No white doves, no floral arches, no drone camera circling us like we were celebrities. Just me in a simple off-white dress, Liam in a navy blue blazer, and a quiet mutual understanding that this wasn't about a performance. It was about peace. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves. Nothing poetic or theatrical, but honest, grounded words. Promises that felt real. When the clerk pronounced us husband and wife, Liam looked at me with a mix of reverence and relief, and I realized something. I hadn't once thought about my parents. Not during the vows. Not during the kiss. Not even when we stepped outside to take a few photos under a tree covered in new blossoms. It wasn't bitterness. It was absence. They weren't there, and I didn't miss them. Afterward, we went to a quiet little restaurant. Liam had picked, one with no reservations and the best homemade ravioli I've ever tasted. The server brought us a small complimentary dessert with "Congratulations" written in chocolate, and Aunt Claire handed me a folded envelope instead of a gift. "Open it later," she said, "when it's just you." We spent that evening in the small 2-bedroom house we'd just closed on a month before. It was modest, a little older than we'd hoped, but it had good bones. I had painted the walls myself. Liam had installed new fixtures. Every nail, every box we unpacked had meaning. It was the opposite of showy. It was quiet. It was ours. Later, that night while Liam slept, I opened the envelope from Claire. Inside was a short letter, written in her neat slanted handwriting. "Rachel, you chose yourself. I watched you do it without screaming, without burning everything down, even though you had every right to. I want you to know something. Your parents talk about you now. Quietly. Mostly in the mornings. Your mom still keeps the wedding announcement on her nightstand. She doesn't call because she knows she can't fix it, but she looks at that card every day. Your dad, well, he says it was the biggest mistake he ever made. I'm not saying this so you'll forgive them. I'm saying it because even when people don't say sorry out loud, regret has a way of sitting with them. I hope, in time, it leaves you lighter. Love always, Claire." I read the letter twice. Then I placed it gently inside the drawer of my nightstand next to the pearl necklace Mom had mailed me 6 months earlier, wrapped in tissue paper, accompanied by a note with 7 shaky words. You were always the strong one. I'm sorry. I hadn't worn the necklace. I still wasn't sure if I ever would. But I didn't throw it away either. It was a symbol of something I had lost, but also of something I had reclaimed. The next morning, Liam made coffee while I stood barefoot. In the kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window. We talked about the garden we wanted to build that summer, about painting the spare room, about traveling someday. Not for escape, but for joy. And then, casually, like dropping a pebble into still water, he asked, "Do you think you'll ever speak to them again?" I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because the answer had changed. Maybe, I said, but on my terms, not out of guilt, not because they need something, only if I believe they've changed. And even, then, maybe I'll just send a postcard, he smiled. A postcard sounds about right. That afternoon, I passed by my parents' old neighborhood on my way back from an errand. I didn't stop. I didn't pull into the driveway. But I slowed the car enough to see it. Brooke's old Lexus parked on the street. Its paint chipped, one tire low. The blinds on the second floor were pulled halfway down. The porch light, even in daylight, was flickering. Through the window, I saw movement, my father's silhouette, hunched, slower now, and beside him, Brooke, holding a phone. Pacing. I kept driving. Some stories don't end with a confrontation. Some don't need the last word. Sometimes, walking away isn't surrender, it's survival. And that was the lesson that had taken me 39 years to learn. You can give everything to someone, your time, your savings, your love, and they can still choose someone else. Still trade your years of sacrifice for a moment of glitter. But what they can't take, no matter how hard they try, is your healing. That belongs only to you. And as I drove back to my new home, wedding ring warm on my finger, garden plans in my passenger seat, I realized I was no longer mourning what they stole from me. I was building what they never could. The package arrived on a rainy afternoon, just as I was finishing work. It was plain, no return address, wrapped in brown paper and sealed with tape that had started to peel at the corners. My name was written on the front in my mother's handwriting, still neat, still deliberate. I stood in the hallway holding it for a long time before I brought it inside. Liam looked up from the kitchen, where he was chopping vegetables for dinner. "From them?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Do you want to open it now?" "I don't know," I said, but my hands were already unwrapping the paper. Inside was a small velvet box, the kind that once held my grandmother's pearls. The ones Mom used to wear only on Christmas and anniversaries. The only piece of jewelry she never gave Brooke, no matter how much Brooke begged for it. There was also a note. Just a few lines, handwritten. "We should have trusted you. We should have seen who you really were. The responsible one. The one who gave us everything without asking for anything back. We are so sorry. We love you. Mom and Dad." I read it 3 times. The words didn't sting. They didn't soothe either. They simply landed, like dust on a windowsill. Quiet. Undeniable. Too late. I put the pearls back in the box and tucked the note into a drawer. Maybe one day I'll wear them. Not today. Today I'm wearing the simple silver pendant Liam gave me on our first anniversary. It's not expensive. It's not flashy. But it's real, just like the life we're building. That weekend, we planted the first flowers in our backyard garden. Tulips and lavender, things that take root slowly and bloom without drama. We hung a bird feeder outside the kitchen window and bought a secondhand bookshelf for the sunroom. The kind of life I used to dream of building for other people, I was finally building for myself. I haven't spoken to my parents since the letter. Brooke, last I heard, was working double shifts at a restaurant and struggling to make the minimum. Payments on her wedding debt. The luxury car is gone. The apartment is gone. Brandon is gone. She's back in her old room, no longer the golden child, just a shadow of the girl who once stood in a designer dress, surrounded by rented fairy. Lights, and I'm here, married, grounded, at peace. Do I forgive them? I don't know if forgiveness is even the right word. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's about setting myself free. I don't carry the weight of that betrayal anymore. I don't lose sleep thinking about what could have been. Because I know now, I gave them every opportunity to do right. I gave them my trust, my money, my years, and they gave it all to someone who didn't know how to hold it. But they can't take what I built out of the ashes, not my boundaries, not my peace, not my future. So if you've been where I was, pouring your heart into people who only see you as a backup plan, a safety net, a resource to tap into when it suits them, I want you to know something. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not cruel for choosing peace. You are not broken for walking away. Some people don't learn until they're forced to sit in the silence they created. And some families don't heal, but that doesn't mean you can't. You don't have to burn bridges. But you don't have to rebuild them either. You get to build something else, something better, something yours. If this story resonated with you, even just a little, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support gives us the motivation to keep telling the stories that matter. The ones that are raw, real, and remind us that healing isn't just possible, it's powerful. See you in the next story.